There is a moment in every person's life when heaven does not whisper, it weeps. And today, the title you just read is not ordinary. It is not grammatic language. It is not exaggeration. It is a direct spiritual alarm. God is begging you with tears, please don't ignore me again. Something unexpected will happen in the next few hours. If you skip this, you will miss the only chance to stop it. Open before 11:55 p.m. These are not casual words. They carry weight. They carry urgency. They carry the trembling heartbeat of a father who has been trying to reach you over and over again. Right now, as you listen to this, something is shifting in the unseen realm. There is movement. There is a countdown you cannot see with your physical eyes. And what makes this moment so serious is not fear, it is timing. When heaven repeats itself, it is because something critical is approaching. God does not beg without reason. The Creator of the universe does not plead unless the window to intervene is narrowing. You may be asking, why would God beg me? Because love pleads. Because mercy reaches out again and again. Because when danger approaches a child, a loving father does not stay silent. There are times when warnings come gently. And then there are times when the tone changes, when the message becomes intense, emotional, almost desperate. This is one of those moments. Something unexpected is forming in the next few hours. Notice the language carefully. Unexpected. That means it will not announce itself. It will not send you a polite notification. It will arrive suddenly. It could be a conversation that shifts your future. It could be a decision that alters your path. It could be news, an opportunity, or a confrontation. Unexpected events do not always look dramatic at first. Sometimes they look small, but they carry long-term consequences. And here is the deeper truth. This is not about punishment. It is about prevention. Heaven always warns before allowing consequences to unfold. The reason this message is urgent is because you are standing at a crossroads. One small act of obedience within the next few hours can redirect what is trying to unfold. One prayer, one pause, one decision to listen instead of dismiss. The phrase, please don't ignore me again, reveals something even more personal. This is not the first time you have felt a tug in your spirit. It is not the first time you sensed you should slow down, pray, or pay attention. There were previous nudges, subtle impressions, moments when you almost acted, but life got busy. Distractions pulled you away. You told yourself, I'll deal with it later. But later has arrived. And now there is a divine timestamp attached to this moment. Open before 11:55 p.m. That specific time is not random. It represents the final minutes before a shift, the final stretch before a new hour begins. Spiritually, it symbolizes the closing of one season and the irreversible opening of another. 5 minutes before midnight is not the beginning, it is the last call. It is the last announcement before change becomes permanent. Why 11:55 p.m.? Because there are moments in life when heaven marks a line in the sand. A moment where delay can no longer continue. A moment where indecision becomes a decision in itself. If you ignore this, you are not simply skipping a video. You are stepping past a warning designed to shield you. Feel the urgency, but do not mistake it for condemnation. This is not anger speaking. It is heartbreak mixed with protection. Imagine a parent watching a child walk toward unseen danger. The parent shouts. The parent runs. The parent calls the child's name again and again. Not because they want control, but because they want safety. Something unexpected will happen in the next few hours. That statement is not meant to cause fear. It is meant to awaken awareness. There are moments in destiny that are time-sensitive. You cannot rewind them. You cannot request a replay. When they pass, they pass. And the only chance to stop what is forming is within this narrow window. Right now, you might feel a stirring in your chest, a sense that this message is not random. That feeling is not coincidence. It is confirmation. When heaven emphasizes urgency, it is because intervention is still possible. That is the good news. If this were too late, there would be no warning. The very fact that you are hearing this means mercy is still active. Protection is still available. The door is still open. But the door will not stay open forever. This is the hour where attention becomes obedience, where listening becomes action, where ignoring is no longer harmless, it is costly. The next few hours are not ordinary hours. They are strategic. They are decisive. They are spiritually charged. God is not waiting because he is powerless. He is pleading because you are powerful. Your response matters. Your decision carries weight. Your obedience has the ability to shift outcomes you cannot yet see. Before 11:55 p.m., something must change, not around you, but within you. Awareness must replace distraction. Sensitivity must replace indifference. Action must replace delay. This is the urgent cry from heaven. Not to frighten you, not to control you, but to protect you from something you would never choose if you could fully see it. And the next few hours will reveal just how serious this moment truly is. Before something unexpected manifests in the physical, it always whispers in the spiritual. And if you are honest with yourself, the signs have already been there. They did not arrive loudly. They did not force themselves into your schedule. They came gently, persistently, repeatedly. A thought that would not leave. A feeling that something was off. A sudden urge to pray at unusual hours. A name placed on your heart for no clear reason. These are not random mental interruptions. They are signals. You have felt it. That subtle interruption in your routine. A hesitation before making a certain decision. That your resistance when you were about to say yes to something that looked good on the surface. Heaven often begins with nudges, not thunder. But when nudges are ignored, the tone grows stronger. And now, the message has reached this level. Please don't ignore me again. There were dreams you dismissed. Conversations that felt heavier than they should have. Delays that frustrated you, yet secretly protected you. Some doors did not open, and you called it disappointment. But what if it was preservation? What if heaven was already rearranging things to shield you from the unexpected event forming now? Sometimes the sign is peace leaving before a decision is made. Sometimes it is unusual tension around a specific person or opportunity. Sometimes it is repeated confirmation through different sources, a sermon, a message, a scripture, a sudden reminder. When patterns repeat, it is rarely coincidence. It is emphasis. Have you noticed unusual disruptions lately? Small inconveniences that prevented you from moving forward too quickly. A canceled plan, a postponed meeting, a delay that irritated you. You thought it was bad timing, but spiritually, delays can be divine breaks. God will slow you down when acceleration would lead to impact. And then there is the heaviness, that unexplainable weight that settles in your chest when you try to ignore what you know you should confront. That is not anxiety without purpose. It is invasion with rebellion. It is a protective alarm system built into your spirit. The problem is not that heaven is silent. The problem is that distraction is loud. Busyness has become the perfect hiding place for avoidance. scrolling endlessly, filling every quiet moment with noise, avoiding stillness because stillness forces awareness, and awareness demands action. If you have felt more restless than usual, more unsettled than normal, this is not random. It is connected to timing. God repeats warnings before intervention becomes unavoidable. Think about it. Every major turning point in life was preceded by a signal. You sensed something before it happened. You felt it before you saw it. The tragedy is not that signs are absent. The tragedy is that they are minimized. Right now, this is confirmation, not coincidence, not algorithm. Confirmation. If this resonates, if something inside you is saying, "This is about me," then do not brush it aside. This is where I ask you to respond. Take a moment and like this message as a sign of agreement. Subscribe to this channel if you are ready to stop ignoring divine signals. Share this with someone who had been sensing the same urgency but has not found the words to explain it. And in the comments, write, "I will not ignore God again." Not for engagement alone, but as a declaration. When you declare something publicly, it carries weight spiritually. The reason engagement matters is not numbers. It is alignment. When you interact, you participate. When you comment, you confess. When you share, you warn others who may also be approaching a moment they do not fully understand. This is not about building a platform. It is about building awareness. The next few hours are sensitive. And the truth is, you were already warned before you click this. This message is not the first alert. It is the intensified one. The amplified one. The one that comes when previous whispers were postponed. Do not misunderstand the tears in that statement. Please don't ignore me again. Tears are not weakness. They are proof of love. God is not standing at a distance with folded arms. He is leaning in, reaching, calling your name with urgency because what approaches is preventable, but only if you respond. Some people will hear this and scroll past. Some will feel the stirring and silence it with logic. But for you, something is different. You are still here, still listening. That means your spirit recognizes the weight of this hour. Ask yourself, what have I been postponing? What conversation have I delayed? What habit have I excused? What prayer have I avoided? The signs point to one clear truth. Heaven has been speaking, and now the volume has increased because the window is narrowing. When you hear the words, "Please don't ignore me again," you must understand something deeply personal is being revealed. This is not a distant announcement from heaven. This is relational. This is the voice of a father who has been reaching for you across moments you barely noticed. The reason this message carries tears is not because God is powerless. It is because love feels the weight of repeated silence. Ignoring God is rarely loud rebellion. Most of the time, it looks like delay. It looks like "I'll pray tomorrow." It looks like "I'll fix that habit next week." It looks like "I know I felt that warning, but maybe it's nothing." And over time, small delays create spiritual distance. Not because God moves away, but because we become less sensitive. The plea in this message reveals mercy. Think about that. If heaven wanted to judge, there would be no plea. If the decision was final, there would be no warning. The very fact that God is saying, "Please don't ignore me again," means there is still time. It means the door is not fully closed. It means intervention is still possible. But why again? Because this is not the first attempt to get your attention. There were earlier checkpoints, moments when you felt a tug to slow down. I've been making about a will you have. a hesitation about a financial move, a warning about your health, your circle, your choices. Each time, you felt something, but life continued, and the urgency faded. Heaven measures patterns, not just isolated mistakes, but repeated postponements. And there comes a point where the pattern itself becomes the danger, not the specific action, but the habit of ignoring the whisper. When sensitivity decreases, consequences increase. That is why this moment feels heavier. It is not just about what is coming in the next few hours. It is about the cycle being broken now. There is also something profound hidden in the tone of pleading. God does not beg because he needs you. He invites, warns, and even pleads because you need him. When a parent sees a child drifting toward harm, pride disappears. Protocol disappears. Only protection matters. The plea is not about authority being weakened. It is about love being intensified. And here is the deeper truth. Sometimes God allows urgency to escalate because prevention requires seriousness. If a small whisper did not move you, a louder call becomes necessary. Not to embarrass you, not to shame you, but to rescue you from a chain reaction that is already forming. What is forming in the next few hours may not look dramatic at first glance. It may appear as a simple choice. A text message answered in emotion. A decision made in frustration. A word spoken in anger. A contract signed without prayer. But small doors can lead to long corridors. One wrong turn can open a sequence that becomes difficult to reverse. This is why heaven is emotional right now. Because the cost of ignoring this is higher than you realize. And yet, the cost of responding is simple: attention, obedience, humility. Understand this clearly. This is not punishment knocking at your door. This is prevention knocking urgently before punishment becomes necessary. God always prefers correction over consequence. He always prefers warning over loss. The tears represent how deeply he desires you to choose wisely before the hour shifts. There is also something else happening. When God says, "Please don't ignore me again," he is exposing the spiritual fatigue that has tried to settle over you. You have been tired, distracted, pulled in many directions. And when exhaustion mixes with responsibility, spiritual attentiveness weakens. The enemy does not always attack through dramatic chaos. Sometimes he attacks through subtle dullness. But right now, clarity is returning. You are being awakened before something locks into place. You are being stirred before a moment solidifies. That is mercy in motion. And this is the turning point, not just for the next few hours, but for the pattern that has followed you for months. Ask yourself honestly, what has God been asking of me that I have delayed? Is it forgiveness? Is it discipline? Is it separation from something unhealthy? Is it bold obedience in an area I keep avoiding? Whatever it is, this is the hour to stop postponing. Because here is the truth. Ignored warnings eventually become lived lessons. And you are being given the rare opportunity to learn without loss. There is a tenderness in this plea that proves you are still deeply loved. If heaven had given up, there would be silence. But there is no silence. There is urgency. There is emotion. There is a final attempt to shift you before the clock strikes. Hold on, because what comes next will reveal how your response in these next few hours can completely redirect what was forming against you. This is not where the story ends. It is where the decision begins. Type "I am listening" in the comments if you receive this message in your spirit. Blessing code 314 is now activated. As this plea echoes in your heart, understand this. Every time you sow into this mission, you help carry this warning to someone who is seconds away from missing their moment. Scripture says, "I will pour water on the thirsty land and streams on the dry ground." And today God is speaking that promise over every seed planted into His work. When you give through Super Thanks membership, with a PayPal link in the description, or even through the PayPal QR code flashing on your screen, you are not funding a channel. You are releasing light into dark hours for souls who are crying silently. I feel led to say this clearly. Your obedience in giving right now is part of someone else's rescue. This is not a donation. This is a prophetic act of alignment before 11:55 p.m. As you sow, may oil overflow in your home, may protection stand at your door, and may heaven respond swiftly to your needs. Step into this moment. Activate your seed. Let your giving speak where words cannot. There are moments when something begins to form long before it becomes visible. Just as storms gather beyond the horizon before clouds ever darken the sky, spiritual shifts begin in realms you cannot see. And right now, something is forming. It has not fully arrived yet. It has not fully manifested, but it is moving. When the title says, "Something unexpected will happen in the next few hours," it does not mean chaos is guaranteed. It means a turning point is approaching. Unexpected does not always mean destructive. Sometimes it means decisive. Sometimes it means revealing. Sometimes it means exposure. What has been hidden can surface quickly. What has been delayed can suddenly accelerate. What has been silent can abruptly speak. The spiritual realm operates with timing that the natural mind often overlooks. While you were going about your routine, thinking today was ordinary, there were movements aligning behind the scenes. Conversations you do not know about. Decisions others are making that will intersect with your life. Opportunities shifting positions. Even resistance reorganizing itself. Unexpected events often fall into 4 categories: relationships, finances, health, and decisions. A sudden conversation that changes a bond. A financial pressure that demands immediate action. A health symptom that forces attention. A choice presented without warning. These are not random categories. They are the main areas where destiny is shaped. In relationships, something unexpected will look like confrontation or clarity. A truth may surface. A hidden motive may be revealed. Or a door you thought was closing might reopen with urgency. The next few hours could bring a message, a call, or an encounter that demands discernment. How you respond in that moment will either escalate tension or establish peace. In finances, the unexpected may not be a loss. It could be an opportunity that requires quick wisdom. A proposal. A contract. A risk disguised as growth. Or perhaps a sudden expense that tests your stability. When urgency mixes with money, decisions become emotional. And emotional decisions often bypass spiritual consultation. In health, unexpected does not always mean crisis. It can mean awareness. A symptom you ignored demanding attention. A reminder to change habits. A wake-up call before something deepens. God often warns before allowing breakdowns. If there has been a nudge about rest, about stress, about discipline, this is connected. And then there are decisions. The most subtle yet most powerful category. A single choice can redirect years. One yes can open corridors you cannot close easily. One no can protect you from unseen entanglements. When something unexpected appears, it often demands an immediate answer. And that is where the danger lies. Immediacy without prayer. The unseen battle happening now is not always dramatic. It is strategic. The enemy does not always try to destroy you in obvious ways. Sometimes he simply tries to rush you, because right decisions rarely carry clarity. They carry reaction. Heaven's urgency in this message is not about creating panic. It is about creating pause. If something unexpected happens in the next few hours, the greatest weapon you have is not speed. It is stillness. It is taking a breath before responding. It is choosing prayer before reaction. Timing is everything. There are moments when silence is safer than speech. Moments when waiting is wiser than acting. Moments when stepping back prevents stepping into regret. The next few hours may test your reflexes, but this is not the hour for reflex. This is the hour for reflection. There is also a deeper layer. Sometimes the unexpected is internal. A surge of emotion. A sudden wave of doubt. An urge to quit something you have been building. A temptation to return to something you were delivered from. Not every unexpected event comes from outside. Some arise from within, triggered by pressure. If you suddenly feel overwhelmed tonight, do not assume it is random. If you feel provoked, do not assume it is justified. If you feel rushed, do not assume it is necessary. The spiritual realm often intensifies pressure right before a breakthrough or right before a mistake. Discernment will determine which direction this goes. Remember this: unexpected does not mean unstoppable. What is forming can still be redirected, but redirection requires awareness. That is why you were warned. That is why the plea came with tears. Because when certain words are spoken, certain agreements signed, certain action taken, the ripple effect begins. You are not being told this to make you anxious. You are being told this so you remain anchored. When the unexpected arrives, you will remember this moment. You will recognize the pattern. And instead of reacting impulsively, you will respond intentionally. The next few hours are not about fear. They are about positioning. Positioning your heart in humility. Positioning your mind in clarity. Positioning your mouth in restraint. Positioning your spirit in prayer. Something is forming, but formation is not final. What becomes permanent depends on how you respond when it appears. There are moments in life that repeat themselves, and then there are moments that never return. What makes the next few hours so critical is not drama. It is rarity. You are standing in a narrow window where intervention is still possible. Once this window closes, the momentum of what has been forming will begin to carry itself forward. And momentum, once released, is difficult to reverse. When the title says, "If you skip this, you will miss the only chance to stop it," that is not exaggeration. It is a description of how spiritual laws operate. There are divine windows and there are closed doors. There are opportunities to correct direction before the road bends too sharply. The only chance to stop what is forming is not complicated. It does not require dramatic rituals or public displays. It requires alignment. It requires obedience in something specific God has already been speaking to you about. The truth is, you already know the area. This message is not introducing a new issue. It is amplifying an old one. For some, the only chance to stop it means remaining silent when you feel provoked to speak. A single argument avoided tonight could prevent a fracture that lasts for years. For others, it means refusing to respond to a message that pulls you back into a cycle you were delivered from. It may mean declining an offer that seems urgent but feels unsettled in your spirit. It may mean choosing prayer instead of impulse. Spiritual windows are time-sensitive because the heart is flexible for only so long. When conviction comes and is ignored repeatedly, it gradually softens into indifference. Indifference is more dangerous than rebellion because it feels harmless. But indifference allows small compromises to root themselves deeply. Right now, your heart is still sensitive. You feel the weight of this message. You feel the seriousness. That sensitivity is your advantage. It means you can still pivot. You can still shift direction before the unexpected becomes permanent. The law of spiritual windows works like this. God warns. God waits. God watches for response. If there is obedience, protection increases. If there is delay, consequences unfold naturally. Not because God desires harm, but because free will is respected. When you choose, you authorize outcomes. This is why the next few hours matter. Your response authorizes what happens next. The only chance to stop it is hidden inside a decision you may consider small. Heaven measures small decisions differently than humans do. A small act of humility can block a large disaster. A brief prayer can silence a long chain of regret. A moment of restraint can cancel a season of pain. There is also something deeper at work. Sometimes what needs to be stopped is not an external event but an internal agreement. Agreements you have made with fear. Agreements you have made with insecurity. Agreements that say, "This is just how my life goes." Those silent confessions shape reality. If something unexpected is forming, it may be feeding on beliefs you have tolerated. Stopping it begins with renouncing it. You may need to say out loud tonight, "I will not partner with fear. I will not rush. I will not respond in anger. I will not reopen doors that God closed." Words matter. Declarations shift atmosphere. When spoken with authority, they interrupt patterns. But here is the warning: hesitation is costly. The enemy thrives in delay. He whispers, "You can deal with this tomorrow." But tomorrow is not promised for this window. The urgency attached to 11:55 p.m. symbolizes a final call before transition. After midnight, certain things move into motion. Some of you feel this strongly because you have experienced regret before. You have said, "I knew I should have listened." You have replayed moments in your mind, wishing you paused for just 1 minute longer. This is not another one of those stories waiting to happen. This is the interruption of that pattern. You are being given awareness before impact. The cost of delay is not always visible immediately. It unfolds gradually. A choice tonight can shape months ahead. A reaction tonight can create distance that takes years to repair. A signature tonight can bind you to stress you were warned about. But a pause tonight can secure peace. The only chance to stop it is humility. Humility to admit you need guidance. Humility to slow down. Humility to pray before proceeding. Pride rushes. Fear reacts. But humility waits for confirmation. In the next few hours, if something unexpected arises, remember this message. Remember that you were warned not to rush. Remember that obedience is protection. Remember that silence can be stronger than argument, and prayer can be stronger than pressure. This window is narrow, but it is powerful. You are not powerless in this situation. You are positioned. Positioned to intercept what was forming. Positioned to redirect what was aligning. Positioned to choose differently than before. The only tragedy would be to ignore this and later say, "I had a chance." And you still do. There is a reason the warning did not simply say soon. There is a reason it did not say sometime today or in the near future. It said, "Open before 11:55 p.m. That level of specificity carries spiritual symbolism. In the natural world, 11:55 p.m. is just 5 minutes before midnight. But in the spiritual realm, 5 minutes before midnight represents the final stretch before a reversible transition. Midnight has always symbolized shift. It is the dividing line between what was and what will be. It marks the end of one day and the beginning of another. It is not gradual. It is sudden. 1 second it is still the old day, and in a blink, it becomes the new one. That is how certain life moments operate. They do not fade slowly. They switch. The time 11:55 p.m. represents grace before change. It represents mercy before movement. It represents warning before consequence. 5 minutes may seem small, but in critical moments, 5 minutes is everything. 5 minutes can stop an accident. 5 minutes can prevent a regrettable message. 5 minutes can allow a prayer that shifts an atmosphere. Spiritually, this timestamp symbolizes urgency with opportunity. You are not at midnight yet. You are before it. That means there is still room to respond. There is still space to act differently. There is still time to align your spirit before the hour turns. The Bible often speaks of midnight as a moment of divine intervention or testing. Midnight is when chains break. Midnight is when cries grow louder. Midnight is when decisions are sealed. It is an hour that carries weight. And 11:55 p.m. is the final call before that weight settles fully. Think about how many times in life you recognized importance only after the clock had already shifted. After the words were spoken, after the contract was signed, after the opportunity passed. Regret often begins at midnight, when reflection replaces reaction. But this time, reflection is being offered before reaction. The number 11 in Scripture is often associated with disorder or incompleteness, something not yet settled. The number 5 represents grace. So symbolically, 11:55 p.m. reflects grace extended into disorder before finality. It is a picture of God stepping into chaos and saying, I am giving you a final moment of clarity. This is not superstition. It is spiritual awareness. The specific time forces you to confront urgency. It removes vagueness. It tells your spirit that this is measurable. This is not an abstract warning. It is tied to a moment. The power of a deadline is focus. When people believe they have unlimited time, they procrastinate. When they know time is limited, priorities shift instantly. Suddenly distractions lose their attraction. Suddenly clarity becomes sharp. 11:55 p.m. symbolizes a sharpening of awareness. Here is also another dimension. 5 minutes before midnight is quiet. The world is slowing. The noise decreases. It is a reflective hour. That quietness can either be peaceful or heavy depending on your spiritual posture. If you enter midnight aligned, you cross over in peace. If you enter midnight misaligned, you cross over in tension. God often works with divine appointments. Appointments require preparation. You do not arrive casually at something important. You prepare your heart. You check your spirit. You position yourself. This is an appointment with discernment. The enemy also understands timing. He knows that rushed decisions near transition points carry long-term impact. That is why pressure often increases right before a shift. Distractions become louder. Emotions become stronger. Opportunities feel urgent. It is not coincidence, it is strategy. But here is the powerful truth. When heaven warns you about timing, it means heaven intends to protect you through timing. The warning itself is evidence of covering. If you were meant to walk blindly into what is forming, there would be silence. But there is no silence. 11:55 p.m. is the space between ignorance and awareness. It is the moment where you choose how you will cross into the next phase. Will you cross with prayer or with impulse? Will you cross with humility or with pride? Will you cross alert or distracted? This is not about fear of the clock. It is about respect for transition. Every new day carries consequences from the previous one. What you decide before midnight echoes after it. That is why this warning feels intense. It is not about one event. It is about the trajectory that event creates. In the next few hours, watch for pressure. Watch for urgency. Watch for sudden demands. And remember this symbol. You are in the final 5 minutes of grace before a shift. The clock has not struck yet, but it is close. If the enemy cannot destroy you openly, he will distract you quietly. That is the strategy most people underestimate. They look for dramatic attacks, visible threats, obvious chaos. But the most dangerous trap is not destruction. It is diversion. And in moments like this, when heaven is pleading and timing is sensitive, distraction becomes the primary weapon. Think about how easily your focus can be pulled. A notification, a random thought, a sudden craving to check something unimportant, a conversation that feels urgent but carries no eternal weight. Distraction rarely announces itself as harmful. It presents itself as harmless, entertaining, even necessary. But its true purpose is to pull your attention away from what matters most. Right now, your awareness is heightened. You feel that something is forming. You sense that the next few hours carry unusual weight. And that is exactly when distraction intensifies. The enemy knows he does not need to force you into rebellion if he can simply keep you busy. Because busyness creates numbness. How many times have you felt a nudge to pray, only to scroll instead? How many times have you sensed you should pause, only to fill the silence with noise? The trap of distraction works because it feels productive while accomplishing nothing spiritually. It gives the illusion of engagement while draining discernment. There are 3 primary forms of distraction that surface before critical moments: emotional distraction, digital distraction, and mental distraction. Emotional distraction happens when someone suddenly provokes you. A comment irritates you. A memory resurfaces. A small disagreement escalates. Your emotions flare, and suddenly your energy is consumed by defending, explaining, reacting. The enemy understands that emotional instability clouds spiritual clarity. If he can provoke you, he can reposition you. Digital distraction is the most common in this generation. Endless scrolling, random videos, news that has no relevance to your destiny. Hours pass without realization. The mind becomes overstimulated but spiritually dull. And in that dullness, the urgency of heaven fades into background noise. Mental distraction is more subtle. It is overthinking. It is replaying scenarios. It is imagining conversations that have not happened. It is anxiety disguised as preparation. You convince yourself you are being responsible by thinking everything through, but in reality, you are exhausting your focus before the real moment arrives. The danger of distraction is not just lost time. It is lost sensitivity. When your attention is fragmented, your discernment weakens. And when discernment weakens, you become vulnerable to rushed decisions. Remember this. If you skip this, you will miss the only chance to stop it. Skipping does not only mean ignoring the message. It also means allowing distraction to rob you of action. You can agree with everything being said and still miss the moment because you were preoccupied. There is also a deeper layer. Sometimes distraction is not external. It is internal avoidance. You know what you need to address. You know the conversation that needs to happen. You know the habit that needs to change. But instead of confronting it, you choose comfort. Distraction becomes a shield against responsibility. But tonight is not a night for comfort. It is a night for clarity. You must guard your focus fiercely in the next few hours. If something unexpected arises, your ability to respond wisely depends on your level of awareness. Awareness cannot survive in chaos. It requires stillness. The enemy hopes you will treat this as dramatic exaggeration. He hopes you will say nothing will happen. He hopes complacency will lull you into passivity, because complacency is the gateway to regret. Ask yourself right now, what usually distracts me when I am on the verge of a breakthrough or a mistake? Is it social media? Is it emotional reactions? Is it overthinking? Identify it before it identifies you. Distraction is powerful because it feels innocent, but its consequences are not. A distracted driver misses a turn. A distracted leader misses a warning. A distracted believer misses divine instruction. The plea from heaven was emotional for a reason. It was not just about the unexpected event forming. It was about the battle for your attention. Because whoever controls your attention influences your decisions. And your decisions tonight carry weight. So if you feel the urge to scroll mindlessly, pause. If you feel provoked to respond immediately, pause. If you feel overwhelmed by thoughts racing, pause. Stillness is your defense. Prayer is your anchor. Silence can be your shield. This is not about paranoia. It is about positioning. The next few hours require intentional focus. The trap of distraction is subtle, but once recognized, it loses power. You have been warned. You have been awakened. Now you must remain alert. Because missing the moment will not happen through rebellion. It will happen through distraction. Everything shifts the moment you choose to respond. Not tomorrow. Not after more confirmation. Not when it feels more convenient. Now. There is power in immediate obedience that most people underestimate. When you respond quickly to God's warning, you interrupt what was forming against you. You step out of reaction and into authority. If something unexpected is preparing to surface in the next few hours, your response right now determines whether it arrives as deception or as redirection. The same event can either harm you or help you depending on your spiritual posture. That is why this warning came before midnight. It is not just about what might happen. It is about who you will be when it does. When you respond now, peace replaces panic. You may still face a sudden conversation, a decision, or a challenge. But instead of being emotionally hijacked, you will feel anchored. There is a difference between facing pressure unprepared and facing pressure positioned. One leads to regret. The other leads to growth. Immediate obedience activates protection you cannot see. It closes doors quietly. It blocks plans silently. It confuses strategies formed against you. You may never even realize what was prevented because it will dissolve before it reaches you. That is how divine covering works, often invisible, but always intentional. Responding now also sharpens your discernment. The fog begins to lift. What felt confusing becomes clear. What felt urgent becomes manageable. What felt overwhelming becomes simple. Clarity is one of the greatest rewards of obedience. Confusion thrives in delay, but clarity thrives in action. Some of you will notice that as soon as you decide in your heart to obey, the heaviness you felt earlier will begin to lighten. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. When your spirit agrees with God, tension decreases. You stop wrestling internally. You stop negotiating with conviction. You settle into peace. There is also a spiritual law at work here. What you resist in obedience weakens in influence. If something unexpected was building momentum, your response disrupts that momentum. Think of it like stepping in front of a rolling object and placing a barrier before it gains full speed. The earlier you intervene, the less force it carries. If the unexpected event involves a conversation, your obedience now will prepare your words. You will speak slower. You will listen longer. You will choose humility over pride. And humility has a way of softening outcomes that could have escalated. If the unexpected event involves finances, responding now may mean committing to prayer before agreement. That pause can save you from entanglement. It can protect you from stress that would have followed for months. If it involves temptation, responding now strengthens your resistance. You will recognize the trap more clearly. You will feel the warning more sharply. And instead of falling into a familiar pattern, you will walk away empowered. But the greatest shift that happens when you respond now is internal. You break the cycle of delay. You silence the habit of postponing obedience. You prove to yourself that when God speaks, you listen. That builds confidence in your spiritual walk. It restores sensitivity that may have dulled over time. There is something beautiful about immediate obedience. It tells heaven, I trust you. It tells the enemy, you will not rush me. And it tells your own soul, we are choosing differently this time. In the next few hours, when something unexpected appears, you will not be startled. You will recognize it as the moment you were prepared for. Instead of reacting emotionally, you will respond spiritually. That is the difference preparation makes. And here is the deeper promise. Sometimes when you respond in obedience, the unexpected event changes form entirely. What could have been loss becomes lesson. What could have been conflict becomes clarity. What could have been pain becomes promotion. God does not just stop harm. He transforms outcomes. You may not see immediate fireworks. You may not hear audible confirmation. But peace will settle over you like a quiet shield. And you will sense that something shifted, not outside first, but inside. You'll be grateful you positioned yourself before the clock turned. Because what is about to be revealed next will show you how this moment connects to a larger pattern in your life. Type I respond now in the comments if you are choosing obedience in this hour. Blessing code 829 is now activated. As you respond in obedience, understand that your seed can become someone else's rescue before their midnight strikes. When you support this mission through Super Thanks, U2 membership, with a PayPal link in the description, even through the PayPal QR code on your screen, you are sowing light into hours of confusion for countless souls. The Lord declares, give, and it shall be given unto you. And this is not just a verse. It is a living promise breathing over your act of faith right now. I feel this strongly. Your generosity at this moment is a prophetic interruption in someone else's crisis. Do not see it as a transaction. See it as oil poured into lamps before darkness tries to fall. As you sow, may open heavens respond over your home. May provision chase you, and may protection surround your family. Step into this holy partnership now. Release your seed and let it speak in eternity. Now that you understand the urgency, the timing, the distraction, and the protection available through obedience, the question becomes simple. What must you do tonight? Awareness without action is wasted mercy. You have been warned not just to observe, but to move. And the movement required is not complicated. It is intentional. The first prophetic action you must take tonight is to pause everything for a few minutes and create stillness. Turn off the noise. Put the phone down. Step away from the scrolling. This is not symbolic. It is strategic. Distraction loses power when you deliberately silence it. In that stillness, say out loud, God, I will not ignore you again. Speak it clearly. Speak it slowly. Let your own ears hear your surrender. The second action is prayer, but not right prayer. Not distracted prayer. Focused prayer. A prayer of alignment. You do not need perfect words. You need honesty. Tell God where you have delayed. Tell Him where you felt the nudge and postponed it. Confess any pride that caused hesitation. And then ask specifically, reveal what is forming in the next few hours and give me the wisdom to respond correctly. Specific prayers produce specific clarity. The third action is evaluation. Before midnight, reflect on the areas that were highlighted earlier. Relationships, finances, health, decisions. Ask yourself directly, is there anything pending in these areas that requires caution tonight? Is there a message I was about to send? Is there a call I was about to make? Is there a decision I was about to finalize? Slow it down. Delay it until peace confirms it. Sometimes the prophetic action is not doing something new. It is stopping something you were about to do. The fourth action is verbal authority. If fear tries to rise in the next few hours, do not entertain it silently. Speak against it. Say, I reject fear. I reject haste. I reject confusion. I choose clarity and protection. Words shape atmosphere. When spoken with faith, they shift internal momentum. If temptation arises unexpectedly, recognize it as the moment you were warned about. Instead of arguing internally, remove yourself immediately. Change environment if necessary. Disengage from the conversation. Close the app. Walk away from the situation. Immediate physical obedience strengthens spiritual authority. If a sudden opportunity presents itself that feels urgent, do not feel pressured to answer instantly. You are allowed to say, let me think about it. You are allowed to say, I will respond tomorrow. True opportunities withstand patience. Traps demand speed. This is also the hour to cover your home in prayer. Walk through your living space if possible, and declare peace over it. Say, nothing unexpected will harm this household. Only what aligns with God's will may enter. There is power in intentional covering. Even if the unexpected event is external, your internal environment can remain stable. Another prophetic action tonight is gratitude. It may sound surprising, but gratitude shifts focus from fear to faith. Thank God for the warning. Thank Him for the timing. Thank Him that you were awakened before midnight. Gratitude opens your heart to trust instead of anxiety. And now, let me say this clearly. If this message has stirred something in you, do not keep it to yourself. Subscribe to this channel if you are ready to remain spiritually alert beyond tonight. Like this video as a declaration that you choose obedience over delay. Share it with someone who may be standing at their own 11:55 p.m. moment. And in the comments, write, I choose obedience before midnight. This is not about numbers. It is about alignment. Public agreement strengthens private commitment. As you move through the next few hours, watch your emotions. If you feel suddenly irritated, pause before speaking. If you feel pressured, slow down intentionally. If you feel confusion, return to prayer. These are signals, not commands. You do not have to obey every feeling. And here is your retention reminder. What you are about to understand in the next part will reveal a biblical pattern that proves urgency before midnight has always preceded major shifts. You will see that this is not random emotion. It is a spiritual principle that has repeated throughout history. Tonight is not about panic. It is about posture. Your posture determines your protection. Your humility determines your clarity. Your obedience determines your outcome. Before 11:55 p.m., act. Pray. Pause. Speak wisely. Delay impulsive decisions. Cover your space. Align your heart. The unexpected may still appear, but it will not control you. What you are experiencing right now is not emotional exaggeration. It is a pattern that has repeated throughout Scripture. God has always warned before he moved. He has always signaled before he shifted. And those who recognized the urgency before midnight stepped into protection, while those who delayed stepped into consequence. Think about the pattern. Before the flood came, Noah was warned long before the first drop of rain fell. The sky looked normal. Life continued as usual. People were eating, working, planning their futures. Nothing appeared urgent on the surface. But Noah responded to a warning others dismissed. His obedience before the storm preserved his household during the storm. Before the destruction of Sodom, Lot was urged to leave immediately. The instruction was clear. Do not delay, do not look back. The urgency was not because God enjoyed rushing people. It was because the window of mercy was closing. When Lot hesitated, he was pulled out by force. Even then, one backward glance carried consequence. It is the weight of delayed obedience. Before the angel passed through Egypt at midnight during the Passover, there was instruction. Apply the blood to the doorposts. Stay inside. Follow the timing precisely. Midnight was coming. But protection was available, not after midnight, before it. Those who treated the warning casually paid a price. Those who responded carefully crossed into freedom. You see the pattern. Warning. Window. Midnight. Outcome. Even in the New Testament, when Paul and Silas were imprisoned, it was at midnight that chains broke. But praise came before the breakthrough. Worship rose before the shaking. There was a posture that preceded the shift. Midnight did not bring freedom randomly. It responded to alignment. Scripture shows us again and again that critical transitions are often marked by specific timing. There is a moment before change solidifies when obedience matters most. That is where you are right now. Not after impact. Not after regret. Before it. There were also moments when warnings were ignored. Pharaoh hardened his heart repeatedly, even after clear signs. Each warning became heavier than the last. Each delay increased the intensity of what followed. The problem was never lack of information. It was refusal to respond. This is why tonight carries weight. You are not without knowledge. You have been alerted. You have been stirred. The question is not whether something is forming. The question is whether you will align before it manifests fully. In Scripture, urgency was not meant to create fear. It was meant to create clarity. When angels spoke, they often moved quickly. When prophets warned, they spoke plainly. When God instructed, he did not hide the seriousness of timing. Because timing shapes destiny. And here is the encouragement hidden inside these biblical patterns. Obedience consistently leads to protection. It may not always prevent discomfort, but it prevents destruction. It may not remove all pressure, but it shields from collapse. The same God who warned Noah, who urged Lot, who instructed Israel before midnight, is the same God speaking to you now. His methods are consistent. His heart is protective. His urgency is merciful. You may feel small compared to biblical figures. You may think your situation is not as dramatic. but the spiritual principles remain the same. A decision before midnight can redirect years ahead. A pause before speaking can preserve a relationship. A delay in signing can prevent bondage. A prayer before responding can alter an outcome. The enemy hopes you treat biblical stories as ancient history rather than living patterns. But Scripture is not outdated. It is instructional. It shows you how God moves and how humans respond. The outcomes are not random. They are relational. Tonight is your Passover moment, your ark-building moment, your exit from Sodom moment. Not necessarily in scale, but in significance. It is a moment of separation, separating reaction from obedience, separating impulse from wisdom. And here is the deeper assurance. When you follow the pattern of Scripture, you position yourself within the protection of Scripture. You are not inventing a new path. You are walking an ancient one that has already proven safe. Midnight is not something to fear when you have prepared before it. Midnight becomes a doorway instead of a disaster. It becomes a transition instead of a tragedy. So as the hours move closer, remember this pattern. God warns before he moves. He signals before he shifts. He pleads before he permits consequence. You are in the warning stage, and that is a gift. Here is something more serious than the unexpected event itself. It is the danger of ignoring this moment and allowing the pattern to continue. Because when warnings are repeatedly dismissed, something begins to change inside a person. It is not immediate. It is subtle. But over time, spiritual sensitivity weakens. And once sensitivity weakens, discernment becomes faint. The first time God nudges you, it feels strong. The conviction is clear. The discomfort is noticeable. The pause in your spirit is undeniable. But if you ignore that nudge, the next one feels slightly softer. Not because God is quieter, but because your heart has adjusted to resistance. Repeated delay builds tolerance, and tolerance to conviction is dangerous. That is why the words "please don't ignore me again" carry such weight. The word "again" reveals a pattern that must end tonight. If this cycle continues, it does not just affect one decision. It affects your spiritual hearing. You begin to question clear warnings. You begin to rationalize obvious red flags. You begin to call urgency exaggeration. Over time, what once felt serious begins to feel normal. That is how compromise becomes lifestyle. It rarely begins with dramatic rebellion. It begins with small dismissals. There is also another danger. When warnings are ignored repeatedly, consequences no longer feel preventable. You may begin to believe that certain outcomes are inevitable, that certain problems are just part of your life story. But many outcomes that feel like fate were once avoidable at a smaller stage. Tonight is not just about preventing one unexpected event. It is about protecting your spiritual sharpness. When you respond now, you strengthen your ability to hear tomorrow. When you obey now, you train your spirit to recognize future nudges more clearly. But if you ignore this again, the risk increases. Not because God withdraws love, but because repeated resistance creates internal distance. It becomes easier to scroll past conviction, easier to silence warnings, easier to choose convenience over obedience. There is also a sobering truth. Sometimes God allows consequences when warnings are consistently ignored, not out of cruelty but out of correction. Consequences teach what whispers could not. But consequences are heavier than whispers. They cost more emotionally. They take longer to repair. You are being offered the lighter path tonight. Imagine standing at the edge of a road with a visible sign that says "bridge out ahead." If you ignore the sign once, you may still have time to turn around. But if you repeatedly dismiss such signs in life, eventually you stop looking for them. That is when danger becomes immediate. Spiritual dullness does not happen overnight. It is built through small choices, through repeated postponement, through justifications that sound reasonable in the moment but expansive in the future. There is also mercy in this warning. The fact that you feel conviction means your heart is still responsive. If you were completely hardened, this message would not stir you. You would feel nothing. But you are feeling something. That means there is still softness. There is still space to realign. The enemy would love for you to treat this as emotional intensity that will fade by morning. He would love for you to say, "Nothing happened last time I ignored a nudge." But patterns accumulate quietly. What seemed harmless individually becomes harmful collectively. Ignoring this again could mean stepping into unnecessary stress. It could mean repeating cycles you prayed to escape. It could mean reliving lessons you thought you had already learned. And repetition is exhausting. But here is the hope. Cycles can be broken in a single decisive moment. Patterns that lasted years can end in one act of obedience. They again does not have to continue. This is your interruption point. You are not too vergone. You are not disqualified. You are not beyond restoration. But you are at a threshold. And thresholds demand decisions. If you respond tonight, you step into alignment. If you ignore tonight, you risk deepening the cycle. Let this be the last time God has to say, "Please don't ignore me again." Let tonight be the moment you choose sensitivity over stubbornness, clarity over convenience, obedience over delay. Because the greatest loss would not be the unexpected event itself. It would be losing the ability to hear the warning before it. Now take a deep breath. After everything you have heard, the urgency, the warning, the symbolism of 11:55 p.m., the unexpected forming, the danger of distraction, the power of obedience, I need you to understand something clearly. God's heart toward you is not anger. It is protection. It is love. It is fierce, urgent, emotional love. The tears in that statement were not the tears of rejection. They were the tears of a father who refuses to let you walk blindly into something preventable. When God says, "Please don't ignore me again," it is not condemnation. It is compassion at its highest intensity. You were not warned because you are doomed. You were warned because you are valued. And here is the beautiful truth. If you have listened to this message with sincerity, if you have paused, prayed, reflected, and positioned your heart before midnight, then you have already shifted something in the spiritual realm. Obedience does not always make noise. Sometimes it works quietly, invisibly but powerfully. The unexpected event that was forming does not have the final say. God does. If something still arises in the next few hours, you will face it differently. You will not face it as someone unaware. You will face it as someone prepared. And preparation changes outcomes. What could have escalated will stabilize. What could have harmed will teach. What could have shaken will strengthen. You are not fragile in this moment. You are covered. The enemy wanted you distracted. Heaven made sure you were alerted. The enemy wanted you rushed. Heaven slowed you down. The enemy wanted you numb. Heaven stirred you awake. And now, as the clock moves closer to midnight, you do not stand in fear. You stand in awareness. You stand in humility. You stand in alignment. God's desire is not to punish you after 11:55 p.m. His desire is to protect you beyond it. When the day turns and the hour shifts, you will cross into it with peace instead of panic. Because you chose to respond. Remember this always. Warnings are proof of relationship. Silence would have meant distance. But you were not met with silence. You were met with urgency. That means you are deeply known. Deeply seen. Deeply loved. Whatever happens next will not surprise God. And because you aligned yourself tonight, it will not overpower you either. There is strength in you that you may not even recognize yet. There is discernment awakening that will serve you beyond this one moment. There is maturity growing through this decision. Let this be the night the pattern ended. Let this be the night delay lost its grip. Let this be the night you stopped negotiating with conviction and started moving with clarity. You are not alone in this hour. Heaven is attentive. Angels are assigned. Peace is available. Wisdom is near. And as midnight approaches, instead of anxiety, let gratitude fill you. Gratitude that you were warned. Gratitude that you were positioned. Gratitude that you still had time. Now I want you to seal this moment with faith. Type "I am covered" in the comments if you believe God has positioned you for protection tonight. Blessing code 952 is now activated. I declare over you, what was meant to rush you will slow down. What was meant to confuse you will become clear. What was meant to trap you will lose its grip. Your home is protected. Your mind is steady. Your decisions are guided. You will not cross midnight in regret. You will cross midnight in alignment. And when you wake up tomorrow, you will realize something powerful. You listened. You responded. You broke the cycle. And heaven rejoiced because you did. As you step into this new hour covered and aligned, hear this. When you sow into this mission, you help carry this same protection message to someone standing at their own 11:55 p.m. The Lord declares, as long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest shall not cease, and your giving becomes seed that pushes back darkness in another life. When you release your support through Super Thanks, membership, or the PayPal link in the description, even through the PayPal QR code on your screen, you are not funding content. You are igniting light before someone else's midnight. I sense this deeply. Your generosity tonight is a prophetic act that echoes beyond this video. As you give, may open heavens respond, may provision multiply, and may divine protection stand guard over your household. Do not delay obedience in this area either. Activate your seed. Partner with this mission now and let your giving preach where your voice cannot.